We think wrongly of time, he said to me. Time is not divided into unrelated chunks and eras, the Romans, the Saxons. Time is all attached in one long string made only of days. If we could just go back day by single day, we would come to our ancestors and their ancestors and Jesus' time and the Stone Age. There are no gaps in between. Only sunsets and sunrises. Only days. War, it seems to me, is an inevitable part of human experience. Why this should be, if it is true, is a matter of philosophical and anthropological debate. There may have been golden ages of peace in the bygone histories of many communities around the world. I like to think so. To me, however, born in 1920, the idea and subject of war has been a natural part of my life from boyhood. In addition to my reading about the Great War in Harmsworth's Universal Encyclopedia, and I can to this day recite from memory all the gold leaf identification letters on their black spines, there were the faint rumbles of war when an ex-serviceman would sing some song, cap in hand, hoping for a penny from the housewives. Another memory as a young boy, of course, was my father's foot. His father was Herbert Bower, Daddy's daddy, my grandfather. Herbert's mother, Sarah, was brought up in Haworth, home of the Bronte sisters, her own sister baptised by the Reverend Patrick Bronte. Herbert remembered that his mother referred to the parsonage as where them three daft girls lived. She spoke disparagingly of Branwell Bronte, who drank heavily. Drink was never approved or mentioned by Herbert's mother. Neither was her husband, Thomas, who, although a noted tenor singer, had, it was rumoured, disgraced our family by dying in a drunken brawl, though his death certificate blames TB. So, my great-grandmother brought Herbert and his brother Tom up alone in Leeds. And somehow, because he showed promise, Herbert had singing lessons. Now, his teacher was John Browning, Elgar's choice for the principal bass at Leeds Festival in 1898. Dad and I wonder how Sarah paid the fees. She had named her firstborn after her brother, who was very supportive, so perhaps he helped her son. Herbert grew to be a renowned bass baritone who remained an amateur of wide reputation, forever in demand for Gerontius, Messiah and the like. As a small boy, Dad used to lie on the landing, craning to hear his father practising in the kitchen below. It had good acoustics. And in awe at how long he could sing without a breath. And he would accompany him to his performances, marvelling at his tone and phrasing, though unaware of these terms, lost in the wonder of his voice. Praise always embarrassed Herbert, apparently. He never accepted payment for his singing, saying it was a gift from God. And Herbert's string of days took him from childhood to marriage in Leeds, the birth of a son, Roland, and to war in the trenches. Our lives overlapped for only 7 months. I know of only 2 photos of us together. But I have my father's story, Len's story, of Herbert. World War I. My father Herbert was one of the lucky ones, though he wouldn't have used the word lucky himself. Perhaps blessed or even chosen. His life was saved by 3 men, 2 Germans and a Russian. And but for them, of course, I, Len, wouldn't be here today. Herbert enlisted on April the 8th, 1916, 1 day before his second son, Alan, was born. At 9 o'clock on the morning of Alan's first birthday, 100 years ago this year, the Battle of Arras began, in the Great War, as we used to call it, when our army went over the top to attack the German lines. Herbert, aged 25, was already out in no man's land, in charge of a squad of men in a shell hole. Casualties were heavy and our men were thinned out. On May the 3rd, Herbert fell, badly wounded by machine gun fire, with shrapnel in his back, a bullet in his arm, and despite his heavy army boots, a very terrible wound to his right foot. He couldn't move, but remembered trying to shout for help, so must have been conscious at least from time to time. He was there for the best part of 2 days. No sign of life around him, only distant, sporadic machine gun fire. But then his isolation ended. 2 German soldiers took the risk of crawling out of their trench, finding him and dragging him back to safety. They then took it in turns to carry him some 2 miles or more over shell-torn ground to a field medical station behind the German lines, where they left him. My father never saw them again, never knew who they were. In the hospital at Cassel there was a prisoner of war camp. Surgeons were preparing to amputate Herbert's foot, but one of them believed he could save it and persuaded them to let him try. This surgeon was a prisoner of war, a Russian soldier, a Dr. Karl Figanov. He saved my father's foot. Meanwhile, my mother, with Roland nearly 3 and Alan aged 1, received this letter. And Herbert heard that his brother Tom had been killed at Passchendaele. Peace came in 1918. From an English train window as it passed through a station, Herbert threw a scribbled postcard addressed to his wife. He had no stamp. Mother received it, franked, and with a message added. Glad Herbert is on his way. Lucy Taylor. Who was she? They were never able to thank her. Some weeks later, he returned home. Now, the reason for his discharge is given as a scar. Hardly the word. He had a suppurating, open, and visually distressing wound, as if the foot had been chopped in half lengthways from the back of the heel to the middle of the sole, needing hospital treatment for 10 years. Herbert brought back several photographs of himself and Dr. Figanov. On the back of one, the doctor has written a message. Even during months of captivity, opportunities arise that may create a lasting good fellowship with men of other nations. My grandfather returned to his wife and his 2 little boys, Roland and Alan, and my father, Len, was born 2 years later. Although in the tailoring business by profession, Herbert's true skill and passion was always singing. Among the ageing photographs I have is this one, marked Church Choir, Cassel, 1918. No recordings of Herbert or his choirs were ever made. I grew up knowing 2 uncles and 8 aunts. The uncles were a talented amateur painter and a gifted sign writer. As a boy, I was in awe of their work. The aunts were housewives and teachers. Dozens of cousins. The 20s were years of great family warmth, music, singing, a piano ever present, solos from cousin Willie, tenor. My father, bass, and Uncle Willem's piano. Laughter spilling from room to room, children chatting under tables, never a drop of alcohol to be seen, all happily teetotal and largely Methodist like us. I never heard my parents argue. Church was the norm, morning and evening, afternoon Sunday school, me winning William books for good attendance, my parents in the choir, table tennis, badminton, men's fellowship, ladies' plays, mother in every one of them. And teenagers enough, though the word did not exist, for our own 2 cricket teams. Saturday afternoons in whites and sunshine. School. I won a scholarship, my brothers there before me. Begowned staff, mortarboarded head in morning assembly, proud of our uniform in the Leeds coat of arms, obeying school rules automatically. If I went out, I was home by 9:30, 10 at the latest. The thought of rebelling would never have occurred to me, though I was put on detention once for making a paper plane out of my English essay after school. It floated beautifully across the empty classroom, through the open doors and down the wide corridor, to be neatly caught by an approaching master. I became very able at art, loved music, hated piano lessons. It was like having to read dull stories by other people. I wanted to make up my own stories. I played with harmonic ideas, listened with shocked interest to jazz on the wireless, 5:15 daily, Jack Payne and his orchestra, and to the chromatic beauty of Debussy and Delius. I fell in love with the sound of the clarinet at 13, saved up slowly, bought the best second-hand one I could at 17, and taught myself. Both my brothers married. And I won another scholarship to Leeds College of Art in 1939. Morning service, sitting in the choir, Dad behind me, Mother in the altos, the Reverend Frank Hainsworth in the pulpit. A steward. There has been an announcement from the Prime Minister that we are now at war with Germany. And then, no further reference. He continued the service, his congregation in shock. My mother, with 3 boys aged 19 to 24, fainted and had to be helped out. Looking back, I don't think Hainsworth could cope. At art college, instead of life classes, we assembled civilian gas masks for Leeds Corporation. My father's clothing firm made gas mask satchels. I volunteered for the RAF. I'd always been interested in aircraft, though never in flying, despite my paper aeroplane. I was accepted as ground crew potential and called up in summer 1940. Life, as I had always known it, was over. He's blind now, 94. 100 years have passed since Herbert's Great War began. And Dad has asked me to clear things which get in his way or which he can no longer see. In a bookcase, a smallish box, ink washed in green, neatly scored, mended with masking tape, clearly Dad's handiwork, purpose-built to house something. I take them to him. I put them in his hands for him to feel. Diaries merely indicate what went on each day, what work on what aircraft, what raid on which city, which kite didn't get back. They don't record the smell of 100-octane petrol, the creak of a walk in a Wellington fuselage, the blackness of the blackout, the echo of an empty hangar, the acrid, remembered smell of Leeds when, often at 3 in the morning, I would open the train carriage door on leave. They don't record huge camp, long wooden huts, lino, black iron beds, like a hospital ward in shades of brown, without a hygienic smell. They don't record the sense of organised confusion. A meal in a place called a mess, lining up in long, puzzled queues, with names being called alphabetically, and filling in numerous forms, and being issued with full kit. Uniform, trousers, thick woolen underwear, non-stretch braces, socks, boots, kit bag, mess tin, what? Housewives, huh? Irons, pardon, button stick, eh? Bandage pack, bootlaces, brushes, mug and haversack, gas mask, forage cap, cape cum ground sheet, and on with my pyjamas in a hard black bed. Pillow like a sandbag, coarse grey blankets, what, no sheets? And our precious, soft, comforting and comfortable clothes, parcelled up tight and sent off home. August 30th, good stuff and plenty of it, but socks would fit the hut, not my feet. And so we dressed in our nearly fitting stage clothes, extras in some big film production, not knowing that the part hadn't been written or what our parts were, when or where the shooting would begin. Pushed onto the stage with no acting experience, like my first day at school, but no mother. He was 3 weeks in a hutted camp, nothing but huts to clean and polish, buttons and boots to clean and polish, faces to shine and shave. We were inspected, huts were inspected, we became booted robot marchers responding to syllables with smooth synchronicity. Why? Woe betide the airman who might ask. We ceased to be pedestrians, ceased to be civilians, vaccinated, inoculated. Dad was amazed at how many airmen fainted before they even reached the needles. Left, right, wheeling, turning, reversing, stopping. And we were airmen, we were numbers, 1006678. September 3rd, barrage of AA overhead, sleeping under bed. Sergeant told us off for a dirty hut. We thought it was perfect. September 4th, had bayonet drill in morning, rather fun but blinking hot and rather gruesome. Letter from mother. September the 5th, afternoon during drill, Jerry passed over very suddenly and AA burst all above, ran into huts immediately. White puffs and long white streak in clear blue sky. Bits of shrapnel fell on camp. So, the naivety of the innocent new airman, the sprog, or irk as we were called, had to be quickly replaced with something like cowhide, or better still, coconut shell, tougher than that provided by loving church-going parents, educational advantages, inexperience of poverty, and kindliness and friendship from old and young.
As your NCO, lads, I wish you well, whatever lies ahead of you in this rotten war. I just hope and pray that you don't lose a loved one, as I already have. My only brother, shot down over France 6 months ago. I've been saving ever since to send me mother money to buy him an inscribed gravestone to add to his unmarked grave. Oh, no, lads, no, really. No, I couldn't. Lads, thank you. I don't know what to say. Thanks.
We Sprogs had a collection for him, and no doubt it did his bank account a great deal of good, as the months went by and new intakes of innocent young airmen passed through his experienced hands. The thought of leave was a constant nag, giving rise to the terms browned off and cheesed off, the commonest clichés in RAF parlance, far more frequent than swearing. And indeed, for the entire duration of the war itself, not one swear word appears in my father's diaries. Jennings cracked new windscreen. Nash, nash, most aggravating. However, I do have to warn you that in this production there is one noun which, if said aloud, would disgrace these surroundings. So rather than use that particular word, I would ask if there is a kindly audience member who can just suggest a single noun, the name of something, that we could replace this particular one with. Any ideas, please? Come on, Sue, give me a noun.
Cardigan.
Thank you. That wasn't Sue, by the way. Cardigan it is, okay? So that's the word you need to remember for later. It'll be used in a different context. Thank you. Back to the diaries and the first mention. September 7th, letter from E. E. Girls' school in Manchester, earmarked for a doctor. E, with her fair plaits pinned on her head, whose parents went to Scarborough to the Methodist holiday home at the same time as Dad and his parents, 2 years running, her mother a contralto to Herbert's bass. And what was born to Dad then and remained through his life even after blindness was a deep pleasure in writing. He wrote several letters a day and received as many. Letters were a passion, along, of course, with rare good food. Ping pong at night, rabbit for supper, played in band but bad acoustics, ate sardines at midnight, egg and chips at Haig's Cafe, swell! Swell? I never thought of my father particularly as a food lover or an egg lover, but eggs become a source of excitement, each one recorded. Sunday aft, good tea at Queen's Cafe, egg and chips followed by egg on toast, tea, bread and butter and cakes, 2 and 8pence. And so to his passing out parade, with the band in the square, and off to his next post, with £2 in his pocket. The fully fledged Sprog did the long and painful march in full kit to the train and was deposited on the south coast of Wales, where, a mile from the small village of St Athan, sprawled the huge RAF No. 4 School of Technical Training. Hangars, workshops, airfield, gymnasia, swimming baths, several wings of huts, cookhouses, messes, and the all-important Navy, Army and Air Force Institute building, the NAAFI, known and spelt as... And there he was turned into an airplane technician, trained to understand why aeroplanes flew, in metalwork, construction, hydraulics, pneumatics, aeronautical anatomy and surgical repair. His notebooks were models of drawing expertise, his diaries a blend of frenetic activity and listless ennui. October 2nd, routine again. Not much today. Letters from Ma and Pa. Naffy evening, but didn't stay. October 3rd, decontamination routine. Wrote to Don. Naffy ping pong with Stan. Lent Lou a pair of socks. And he sketched his surroundings. On October the 4th, he used his first pass. Hitched on lorry to station. Hitched on milk train to Leeds. Got home 2 a.m. Bed very soft. Breakfast great. Chicken for dinner. Great to get clarinet. Played at Dennis's. Oh boy! Oh boy. His favourite phrase. Dennis and Harry and Don, later to be my lovely uncles and provide the soundtrack to my childhood, just as Dad's uncles had to his. Well into my 20s, they would play lists of songs into the night, jazz drifting up from the floor below, until stopped by their long-suffering wives because we children were in bed. And all recorded on brown tape. Listen. The next day he was back at St Athan with his clarinet. Musicians, says Dad, found each other. October 10th, music room with Cliff. Not that Cliff. It is 1940. It's Cliff Skelton, another uncle. Tried to explain harmony essential for improvisation, but he doesn't seem to grasp it. 12th, chap came and asked me to play in wing band. Went to Naffy. Piano lacking D flat. How horrid. Concert at night okay. Busked a bit after with a little crowd around. Not bad on whole, but outlandish keys played in made rather difficult. Now presumably the poor pianist had to choose keys avoiding D flat or indeed C sharp. Naffy night. French chap with a pair of brushes on tin. Not bad. Piano C sharp chap medium lousy. Developing my soft slur. Cleaned clary in hut. Dad's clarinet, or clary, was unusual in that it was silver. His diary becomes a list, same categories every day. What films he saw, always with the names of the stars and a comment.
what music he played and worked on, with a stiff grading system for the musicians, exactly which part of which plane he mended, the weather, letters, what he cleaned, what he ate, and moonlight is always recorded. That natural searchlight in the heavens that could change the lives of those below. I read on, and the presence of war weaves like a dark thread among the foreground clutter. I begin to get used to the banal rubbing shoulders with the potentially catastrophic. Mortis, tenon and halving joints, Greece at war. Oh boy, a real fried egg. November 5th, no bonfires. Sergeant caught us for not waiting for inspection, so cookhouse 1 o'clock, potato peeling. Chamberlain died Saturday. November 11th, Armistice Day. Poppies. And so to Christmas, his first away from home. Uninterested in drink, he ignores the rowdy night on Christmas Eve, but records a colossal dinner on Christmas Day. The new year begins with his oral exam with Flight Sergeant Williams, which promotes him to Aircraftsman First Class, AC1, and ups his pay to £1.10 a month. He gets his first RAF diary, changes from pencil to ink, and gets the train to his next posting, changing at a small station called Ely. Bomber Command, 149 Squadron at Mildenhall. I arrived just after the making of the well-known propaganda film there, Target for Tonight. I still remember some of the ground crew in that film. The directors chose men with strong accents to emphasise the range of backgrounds. Crew of F for Freddy, your main aim is to bomb the targets and then bring your men and aircraft back safely. Thanks, sir. Men, you'll find your bomb loads written right up there. The weather should be favourable over the aerodrome. Aye, Jock?
Aye, on the whole, we should probably have a pretty good run into the target.
He was Romanian. All the planes were named as letters of the alphabet. My aircraft was U Uncle, on a lonely dispersal point on the far end of the airfield, by a silver birchwood, with our Nissen hut nearby. Mildenhall had a memorable start. Feb 27th. Dinner time, Jerry came low and machine gunned us. Came again suddenly. Dived onto naffy floor in corner. Dad remembers vividly his moment under the naffy table. He was hit with a violent force, a dead weight landing fully on him. After a terrified second, he found it was not a collapsed roof, but a well-built waif who had flung herself into the same corner. March 16th, 200 days in the RAF. Life changed quickly. Returning from a happy leave in Leeds, I found my beloved kite, U Uncle, had been shot down over Kiel when I was away. German aircraft were around fairly constantly, mainly at night. Air raid sirens sounded in the Cambridge and Ely areas, our own camp siren once or twice, meaning immediate danger. Once, a Junkers 88 appeared at full throttle in broad daylight, low level, firing bullets randomly, spraying our grass airfield, dropping its huge bomb load in the middle of it. I still have a razor-edged piece of the bomb's casing from that day. And memories, sharp as shrapnel. Like the Wellington W, one sunny lunchtime. Men piling in for the flip, for the fun. 8 instead of the permitted 5. 100 yards away. giving us a whoop and a wave. Instead of taking off along the huge length of the runway, the pilot for some reason took off across it. We stood as it failed to clear the high trees, as the starboard wing ripped off, exploding in a huge chrysanthemum of flame, the fuselage turning over, completely destroying a local cottage and its elderly resident, and leaving behind only one item, her charred photograph. And silence, black smoke rising and expanding. Letters from Cliff, Don and E. Felt lethargic all day. Primed oleos and patched. Leak in rear turret. Night painted kangaroo holding a bomb on an Australian pilot's kite. 2 eggs and chips, whoopee! Hurricane crashed in dive on kite P and cut it in half. Chess with Stan. Found out I'm posted Gloucester. Reflecting on 149 Squadron, I am left feeling that we were insufficiently expert or experienced or equipped to wage war well. There was a brave amateurishness about many air crews, an artificial casualness on arriving at night to climb up the nose ladder, carrying parachute packs, maps, a teddy bear, or unofficially, a dozen bottles of baby sham for the way back. May the 23rd, at present on train from Ely to London, from the best place I've been to the worst place. We referred to the comfortless camp as the field of the cloth of tents. Field of bell tents, 4 to a tent, up at 6, whether fair or foul, no social life to be had in the confines of canvas cones. June the 5th, 21 today. Very wet. Usual hydraulics. Letters. Parcel from home. Night replied to all and stayed in tent. I was 21 and not as mature as today's 17-year-old. Oh, I tried a taste of beer, of whiskey, incredulous that anyone could like such acrid chemistry, and deciding my parents, who refused even communion wine, were right. One of the more arduous of the many physical tasks the crew had to perform was the closing of the hangar doors. Hugely heavy, 4 doors at each end. They were on small wheels and required several airmen to shift them on the traditional command with the help of mite, expletives and main. Each sliding door weighed 4 tons. 2, 6! It was these sliding doors which on July the 11th closed on the 2 middle fingers of my father's right hand, leaving the fingertips dangling below. Thinking only of his clarinet, he raced to the medical orderly, who shoved a piece of wood under them, poured a bottle of iodine over them, bandaged the lot and sent him on his way. As a child, search as I might, I could never find a scar on Dad's hand, and his piano and clarinet playing were never impaired. A few weeks after nearly losing his fingers, he is put on fatigues. weeding the cabbage plantation and washing plates. He hears he is to be posted to a new base, but first he has no less than 14 days' glorious leave, which is to include, at last, a meeting with E. Met Dad Leeds station and got home. Civvies, you bet! Bath and went downtown, bought book, musical companion. Harry called, played piano and clary. A stream of friends, numerous visits to the Gaumont, the Gaiety, the Grand, the latter featuring an actor who my 21-year-old father notes is terrific. His name was John Gielgud. Dad's dearest friend Don is also on leave. Oh boy, says Dad. But one name is absent. E's parents altered arrangements. The string of pearls Dad had bought her had, like him, to be posted on. Another airfield, more hangars, more kites. Dismantling, scrutiny, every detail minutely recorded, huge pressure to have every kite serviceable, often working long into the night. August 29th, 1 year in the RAF. September 3rd, war 2 years old. 22nd, Peter Stocks killed. Outstanding illustrator of birds. Great friend. And then, the 24th, a star in the margin. Marvellous day, Manchester, and saw E and family. Over 2 years since we met. Uniform made a hit. Enjoy letter writing these days. I live the words. Posted 23 pages to E. 2 letters from her. Bought book, Modern Masterpieces. Did mods, decker, tail balance, oil collector. Lost 3, 1 crashed Yarmouth, 4 killed, 2 missing. Read art book in bed. X crashed, 5 killed, nasty smash, fine day. Letter from E. Drew at night. Ark Royal sunk at last. Beautiful early morning sky. Pity it can't be painted from here. Letter from E with photo. 2 and 6 postal order from Church. December 8th. Churchill and Roosevelt spoke at night. Japan declared war on America and us. Night went to the gym with Ken and Norm. Fell in a trench coming back. Japs have sunk HMS Repulse and Prince of Wales. Letter from E. Probably war work soon, nursing. 13th. To Leeds. Saw Don on 24-hour leave. Terrific seeing him and playing again. We munched turkey with great verve. 17th. Caught 9:18 to Manchester. E met me at station. Wonderful day. 18th. E brought me tea at 8:40 a.m. Hair down. Superb. War hardened, used to seeing crashes, used to losing crews. We were not in a perpetual state of bereavement. Similar, I suppose, to a doctor losing a patient, but the analogy is fragile. Our patients were quite literally fighting fit when they went on their last journey. It was the war that suddenly left that blank space on the airfield next morning. The war was too big a subject for us to think about, except as a job, not the appalling human tragedy it was. He buys his next diary for 2 and 9pence. And so to 1942 and promotion to leading aircraftsman, LAC. But though he was now allowed to sew propellers on his sleeve, it was still ensured that he knew his place. The latrine block at Binbrook was brand new. It was white tiled. It was immaculate. For reasons he never questioned, Dad was one morning instructed to clean it, and this he did with some pleasure, as all the surfaces were already pristine. He took great enjoyment in soaping and wiping the shining ceramics to a gleam. No corner was left unattended. Each cubicle glistened. After a couple of hours of this, a mustachioed warrant officer arrived to inspect Dad's handiwork. Dad stood to attention.
Nine rank number, who are you? 678 LAC Bower, sir. There's carding and everywhere, do it again!
Dad did it again. A further joy of being LAC was working outside in Siberian snow and freezing winds. The aircraft had to be picketed down with guy ropes. Any water froze to ice, and an open hangar door created a wind tunnel with an ice-cap chill. Dad would sometimes give his duties to a less well-paid airman, such as little Jock Walker. All Scotsmen were called Jock. It was worth giving up a few shillings. And then, an unexpected change. In March, servicing flight was moved from the brick billet blocks to the pastoral, arboreal Swinnop Hall, an 18th century country house, gutted and recommissioned, 2 miles walk across fields and a stream. Oh dear, 5 of us in the stone-floored study off the entrance hall, double doors and a trapdoor to the wine cellar. A fireplace gave us some heat once the coke got going, and the bare plaster walls succeeded in tempting me to cover them with humorous murals of the joys of RAF life. And there we lived for 7 months. I remember no washing or sanitary arrangements. As we trekked through the fields with our wash bags, we must have presented a picture of unkempt, unteeth-brushed, unshaven misery. Cold and headache, aspros galore, much mud and slush. March 22nd, leave, pianoed, called Don, side drum and cymbal, had a tremendous time. Harry there too. Oh boy, home 2:20 a.m. Caught 9:18 to Manchester. He still marvellous, of course. He records that he eats bread ravenously, drinks cocoa, and is fed up after his luscious leave. Here we are. Oh, always the thought of leave. Homely heaven, carpets and wallpaper, sheets, pillow-cased pillows, mowing the lawn, trimming the privet, wearing one's own soft, weightless clothes, which made me feel I was still in my pyjamas. Church with my parents, reminding me of peacetime, perhaps a greater peace, the warmth of friends, healing tones of the organ, healing words of the hymns. My bed was like sinking into swan's down. Eating had a half-forgotten aestheticism. China teacups. a pretty teapot, table linen, a little cut glass bowl full of sliced cucumber, a silver jam pot reflecting my face and destroying my cultural daydream. For camp was a culture shock. The wide geographical variety of men, the absence of women, ear-expanding accents from Land's End to Lossiemouth, Liverpool to Lowestoft. Class awareness was broken down. My two closest co-workers were Ted, or Geoffrey Edward Selwyn Moulson, an ex-public school boy, and Frank Frost, a greengrocer's son. This wartime mix, to me, produced a richer fruit and nut cake than the blander tea cake of peacetime suburbia. Now, I'm taking 20 minutes leave. Not bread and cocoa, tea and cake. Acrid chemistry is being provided for you, I understand. Report back soon. With the arrival of spring, flying time increased. An aircraft in the hangar meant peacetime was put back another month. And there was always an aircraft in the hangar. All days were work days. Weekends were a peacetime invention. April 3rd, 1942, realised when there were no papers that it was Good Friday. He draws his Easter Day breakfast egg in his diary. Tonight, argued on religion, drank Cokie cocoa and talked art. Jerry over midnight, sheltered in wine cellar until 1 a.m. April 23rd, explored house and attics, cleaned buttons, terrific raid. German reprisals on Bath, Norwich, York. Ted's third child born today. A captured Heinkel 111 and Messerschmitt 109 circled and dived low, chased by an enthusiastic hurricane. I admired their German elegance of design, their German song. Ted and I were promoted corporal. I heard from Mother that fellow art student Tommy Holdsworth had been killed. Tawny hair, infectious laugh. On May the 24th, his father Herbert was 50. Time, preserved and static in these diaries, and yet moving then as now, is strange enough to grasp. But I was further confused by the many references to the clocks moving forward at seemingly odd times, until I realised double summertime was introduced in World War II to aid productivity and safety. Man controlling time, yet unable to control his own abuse of it. Continues to be recorded. And these wartime diaries come ready printed with the moon in all its phases. New, full, first quarter, last quarter, eclipse, is seeming to me to have an unsmiling, unsettling, blank expression of incomprehension, slightly accusing, as if asking why it should have to be involved in humanity's violence. May 25th. Went 180 miles in a small van driven by a WWII to collect equipment urgently. Headlights would have helped. May 30th. All kites to be ready for takeoff tonight. At midnight, 26 Wellingtons and 4 Whitleys left and joined the other 1,200 in the as yet biggest raid of the war on Cologne. 12 Squadron lost 4, B, D, E and X. It is so much easier to write "we lost 4", meaning 4 aircraft, than to write "we lost 20", and mean Billy Smith and Tommy Thompson and 18 other names. Aircrew lost friends. Ground crew lost aircraft. I was 22 on June the 5th, my birthday again hardly noticed, all leave cancelled. He received a birthday book from his parents. Here it is. Musical Wind Instruments by Adam Cass. On June the 24th, a fitter was working on N in the hangar, standing on an engine, degreasing it with petrol, when it caught fire. He threw the petrol to the floor, a bad mistake. It splashed his overalls, which caught fire too. He jumped down, yelling. The man's friends were stamping on his body as Dad, knowing the wing was full of petrol, raced for a fire extinguisher. The fitter was burned to death. The month's intensive course varied in tedium. Administration, official publications, the King's regulations, classifications, paralysing paperwork, PT, rifle drill, PT, vile diabolical assault course, but it so developed the muscularity of my vocal cords that I could confidently drill and march a platoon of men over 50 yards away upwind. July 9th. Anning dead. Great chum at college. Killed by Jerry at Weston-super-Mare. He'd been in the RAF 3 weeks. Technical morning. I do all the dictating. Crisp, decisive diction. Gas lecture with smell demonstration. Foul. Cleaned my floor with paraffin. There were small joys to lift the spirits. Dad recalls a hardened Londoner introducing his lecture title as Esprit de Corps. Dad returned to Swinnock to find that 12 aircraft had been lost while he was at Cosford. That night, an explosion shook the hall. D had blown up just after takeoff. All the crew were killed. Dad was given a medical. A1! In health these days, I'm doing all right, way on top. Mice galore in our room. Presumably these two facts were not related. Ah, wondrous day, leave once again. Is it 9 or 10 years since I was in Leeds? Caught 9:18 to Manchester. E pretty as ever. August 29th. In RAF 2 years today. Boo-hoo. September 3rd. War enters its 4th year today. Special service in number 1 hangar. Supped regally on Frank's tomatoes. Frank Frost, later my much-loved Uncle Frank, was, if you recall, the son of the greengrocer. To his delight, Dad was given 12 days leave. Manchester, bought flowers for E. Together again. Leeds, went to Don's, then all of us went to Dennis's, including Harry, where we played together for the first time in over 2 years. The quartet again as of old. Superb playing. Judge for yourself. Here's my father at his vocal best, Uncle Dennis on piano. Inherited his father's singing talent. On the last day of his blissful leave, a telegram came from Frank on the left here. 12 Squadron had left Binbrook. Dad never saw Swinner Paul again. Somewhere under the subsequent layers of paint and wallpaper, his humorous cartoons and murals must remain. I found this on Google. Swinner Paul, small country house, 1785. Stock brick, slate-hipped roofs, traceried oculus. Interior of no importance. Got to Wickenby about 10:45. Billet in Nissen hut with Ted. All open air, no hangar. Now, the washing facilities at Wickenby comprised a long metal trough, a row of taps and a shelf. Conditions were very cold. The lighting of the hut's coke stove became, says Dad, an art form coloured by newly coined prismatic adjectives. Cardigan-esque, perhaps. He receives a parcel from E, containing a novel, soap, and an orange, the last of which is underlined and followed by 4 exclamation marks. The Shakespeare sonnet she also sent him merits no such treatment. December 5th, caught 9:18 to Manchester. E met me, looking very trim in new regalia. 7th, said ta-ta to E at bus stop. Horrid. Now, it should be mentioned that every time he meets E, it includes seeing her father, mother, and younger sister. On this occasion, there was Granny as well. On Christmas Day, he writes E a 23-page letter, and operations are cancelled with the first snow. A white, cold New Year's Eve. Annual high jinks and revelry in the messes. a dance in full swing in the naffy, and a good turnout of wafts. After midnight, I left the celebrations and walked alone back to the Nissen huts in the dark trees. As I approached, I saw that both inner and outer doors of one hut were wide open, with a beam of light destroying the compulsory blackout. I raced, shouting, to the hut. I found 3 airmen in a state of shock, and a 4th on the floor with a bullet hole in his forehead. Little Jock Walker had just shot himself with a Sten gun. I have many wartime memories, but few as eidetic as this experience. Little Jock, R.I.P. Gradually, our beloved remaining Wellingtons said their farewells. We were to be a Lancaster station. My eldest brother Roland, in unspeakable conditions in an Arctic convoy, taking goods to Russia, had in mountainous seas been washed overboard from his naval corvette. The seas had then washed him back aboard, and he was grabbed and had survived. I took leave. Morning with Roland, his scar not too bad. Saw him off to Aberdeen. Played clarinet and then met E at 3 o'clock. Marvellous to see the girl of my dreams again! Triple exclamation mark followed in brackets by tut tut what language. Boy, do we bomb these days. Nose bled profusely afternoon. Very annoying, my bleeding nose. Tut tut, Dad, what language? By now, Dad and E are exchanging daily letters. Meanwhile, the engineering officer, who it seemed had quietly noted Dad's clear explanations, simplified instructions and stunning diagrams, encouraged him to apply for an instructor's course back at Cosford. And to that engineering officer, the world of education should be eternally grateful. The truthful reason for my application was the delightful prospect of working a 5.5-day week instead of a 7, and bidding a fond farewell to living in a freezing Nissen hut. It is interesting to ponder on how my life might have turned out had I not attended that short instructor's course. For on that course, a sense of vocation was born. After what I thought was an excellent first lesson on micrometers, the instructors took me aside.
Now the trouble with you, Bar, said one, is that you are not instructing the men.
I stared blankly. You are teaching them, he said. I modified my approach for my lecture on the hurricane fuselage. The senior instructor said I was a little too enthusiastic at times. Of the 20 trainees, I came top. He got an afternoon pass, dashed up to Manchester, met E, took her to Bambi at the Flicks, and was back in his bunk at 1:30 a.m, and then found that he was returning to St Athan, his training school of 1940, this time as a teacher. I was back in my old wing, and when I was not introducing the structure and workings of the Lancaster, I had Glamorgan to explore. From every pub came the choral singing of the miners, the upward lilt of their voices. My teaching was constantly interrupted by requests from the controllers for more and more full-colour diagrams and large-scale wall charts. I led a double life as instructor and graphic illustrator, or a triple life, for at last I had time for my clarinet and obsessive nightly practice, I was invited to join Four Wing Band, a group of very competent musicians. Soon, Four Wing Band was playing 3 or more times a week at dance halls, Masonic halls, church halls, village halls, ballrooms from Cardiff to Swansea, then Brangwyn Hall with its famous murals, and St Donat's Castle. Leeds, called for Don, jived somewhat and enjoyed each other's faces again. E arrived, looking a treat. August 12th, didn't go grouse shooting. Now, the jiving that he refers to is not dancing, but playing. In all my life, I have never once seen my father dance. It was not easy for a girlfriend. Nevertheless, on August the 15th, 1943, there is a cryptic entry. 12:20 p.m. Hurrah! 3 exclamation marks. He had proposed. August 29th, 3 years in RAF, actual service. Oh, how horrible. I abhor this life and will never be subjugated by it. His diaries become staccato jottings of concerts, listing every number he plays, of drawing endless posters and charts, of ringing and writing to E. Throughout, Dad's exclamatives remain clean as carbolic, reading like a Dennis the Menace comic strip. Brr, boy, bah, Nash. Adjectives he favours are colossal, foul, and luscious, the last of which he applies to his leave, his Leeds bed, baths, jam, and his fiancée. Italy surrendered, did destructor incendiary chant, sergeant's mess dance, super honeysuckle rose, slept during interval. Writing music for Al on accordion, painted hydraulic system, too tired to ring E. I would have sounded like a dying foghorn. Got my slippers today. Boy, what slippers. String and emery cloth. E arrived 11:20, looking lovelier than ever. More talking. What do we talk about? She caught the 5:45 train back and left me in a coma. Christmas arrived. After sleeping off a colossal dinner dance and concert at which he sparkled as a soloist, Dad and his chums rose early on a crisp Sunday morning, crept up to Freddie Whittle's camp bed, and, with the infinite care of those used to dealing with bombs, lifted it whole and carried the somnolent Freddie 50 yards, lowering his bed into thick snow. After gently decorating his face with pieces of orange peel, they returned to the hut, leaving him there. Oh, Freddie. Freddie did well to remain asleep, as the beds were so hard that sometimes I would pay to sleep in a hotel, though this would leave me broke. Once a friend and I cycled 25 miles to Treorchy, only to find the hotel closed. A Welsh miner took us into his cottage and gave us a double bed on which we gratefully slept in our clothes. In the morning, the miner, apologising, cooked us cabbage leaves. We realised this was all the food he had, and that we had slept on his own bed, typical of the generosity of the locals to airmen, as if we were deserving of gratitude. chill better. So ends another year. Played New Year's Eve dance at night. Darned hard work for me. Usual midnight sentimentality. So long, 43. January. Organised 3-part harmony for horn, tenor sax and clary. Sounded bang on. Freddie played. Pretty foul. He likes it to sound like the Salvation Army, I think. Bah! Sun is so unusual here that people go outside and cheer when it happens. Feb 1st. Tonight, show at AA Port in Roos. It was colossal! We excelled ourselves. My chorus in Hot and Anxious apparently made Al stop playing and gape. New drummer, Sid Jauncey by name. Once, Dad tells me, in a concert performance, the slope of the stage was so severe that it caused mid-number the forward collapse of Sid's entire drum kit, cymbals and all, plus Sid. There was general mirth. This is the land of eternal rain. A farmer need never wash. Made cocoa at Al's. 2 attempts as Freddie burnt the milk, producing a flavour reminiscent of an Afghan communal pipe. St David's Day. All the naffy girls are wearing leeks. Rangi. I'm still in love. Jerry over at night. Sirens. Flak. About 8 shot down. Cardiff got it, I think. Tremendous urge to write music before morning parade. Sergeant Thompson on tenor sax was a real letdown. His treacly tone and complete lack of musical sense can be likened to... Yeah, well, never mind. My politics are becoming rather socialist. I hate class distinction of any kind. Supper with Stan. Shouldn't have taken him into our mess, as he's only an airman. What an attitude for the Corporals Club to take. This loathing of class distinction has been lifelong in Dad. Musical distinction was clearly different. All letters censored, second front impending. Night, luscious bath, gloriously fragrant, in Dettol. Rang E, but she was out at the flicks, spoke to her mum, oozing la politesse. Well, better than Dettol, I suppose. Rang E, reprimand that I'm censor conscious. My last letter annoyed her, and I spent conversation in profound apology and gulpings. Night, dance at Savoy, Barry. Ron on tenor played foully. Sounded like a dozen steamrollers gambling over corrugated iron. Parcel of vests, hankies, cake, chalk, tie and sardines from home. He was 24. Evening, went long walk in lovely sunshine. Miles across strange fields, amongst wild irises. Felt good to be alive. Listened for a while to a virtuoso thrush. A typhoon played about overhead. Russia getting very near East Prussia. Rang E at night. I wilt at the knees when I hear her voice. Censorship of mail ceased. Shock at night. E's letter. She had hardly been home in the last 14 days and hardly wrote to me, yet refuses to tell me why. I spoke to her very plainly. I feel very depressed. Couldn't get to sleep. Terrible feeling. Nursing has changed her quite a lot, it seems. Tremendous progress in France. General feeling is that Germans are collapsing. Dad marks exam papers. The war is now 5 years old. He is writing music avidly. His obsessive activity is due to an unprecedented forthcoming event. E has a week's leave! Scream and yelp with delight! And he has found her a billet with a Mrs. Wright. On September the 9th, he meets her at Cardiff Station, commenting that she is pale with suppressed excitement, but pinkish later. Sunday, September the 10th. One of the happiest and most perfect days ever. Dinner at Mrs. Wright's with E. Afternoon, hired a couple of bikes and went out into the country. Boiling, beautiful sunshine. I could yippee with exhilaration all day and night. E has dozens of midge bikes, scratching fitfully. We make cocoa and eat pickles. We laugh a lot together. 17th, starlight walk to beach. Said bye. 18th, feel rather like a dead dog. But what of the war in this unwarlike life I was leading? Oh, I heard about the carnage, aware that I was only on active service while others were in action. But the war was changing. And one night in September 44, all the camp lights, blacked out for years, were switched on. Streets were lit, pavements were flooded with yellow light, almost forgotten the sight, stared at it. We thought we were in Blackpool. October. Met E at station. The joy is ecstatic, seeing her again. Life flows more eagerly in her presence, becomes more full, vital. I love her tremendously. Bleak day. E went to Manchester, curse it. Why do we always have these partings? As the weary hairdresser said. I love her more and more. She's perfect. I mean you, darling. Super letter and parcel from E. Thanks, darling. Band practice again. Enjoyed thrashing out argumentative crotchets. He has begun to address some of his diary to E and begins writing his name for her. Egg. Well, you've seen how he loves them. Miss Stringing Egg, curse it, played at Penarth. Piano was harp from hell. Freddie played like Neanderthal man. Feel generally annoyed, frustrated, nerves on edge. Nash, Nash. Night stayed in mess alone and funk. Went to Manchester and saw E. We made fudge, which turned into a toffee come answer to rubber shortage. He looked smashing. Do you hear, girl? Smashing. Back to work. 7:30 bus. Felt like a turbot that the fishmonger doesn't think he'll ever sell. November 23rd. Read in Melody Maker that Sid Jauncey has been killed. Sid. One of only 5 musicians to win a hard-earned dot in Dad's fierce grading system. He wasn't actually throwing his drumstick here, in fact he'd hung it from a string for the photograph. Caught in enemy fire, the crew bailed out, but Sid stayed behind to help the trapped pilot get free. Sid was shot down over Lorraine in France, a poignant irony. His beloved girlfriend was called Lorraine. Christmas Eve, Sergeant's mess dance, really horrible. They were all drunk and I made a report to the police about it. Christmas Day, bed all morning, bed all afternoon, dance at night, horrible, all drunk again. have broken all records by not succumbing to the mistletoe plague. An excuse for promiscuity, I fear. Not a Christmas to my way of thinking. About announcing our engagement. By 1944. Sweet dreams in your eternal sleep. January the 1st, 1945. E and I start the new year by announcing our engagement. January the 2nd, telegram from E. Her parents perturbed by last night's declarations. Left ring at jeweller's to be sized. Letter from home, congratulating us. Felt really happy about it. Hop-a-ho. E in bed with influenza. Who is this guy anyway? FFI morning. I am clean. Ah, the joy of the body perfect. FFI stood for free from infection, in other words, a check for VD. Dad was possibly the RAF's most unlikely candidate for this. One Sunday night he was stranded in the port of Barry, ravenous, with no St Athan train for some hours. He saw two women and asked if they knew where he could get a meal. They led him towards the docks down some dark streets, to a house where a man cooked him chips and one huge, fresh, glorious sardine. Dad ate alone at a card table. He was puzzled because there was a row of foreign sailors sitting on seats against the wall, but none of them were talking to each other. He paid for the meal and went, still puzzled, on his way. E once again stays at the rights. E and I walked down to the beach. Contrast of colour, deep snow and wet sand. We chatted about her family, and I had to keep my unspoken anger under control. One day I shan't hold it back. And then, without warning, the handwriting changes. It is E. In the 70-year-old ink, I suddenly encounter the young nurse from Manchester with the fair plaits pinned on her head.
February 3rd. You lectured cadets all morning, and then at 1:30 came for me. Had tea at Continental. We were both really happy. Super day. Superman.
The Superman continues. Bought egg, a cookery book, and various little things such as toothpaste, Odol, antiseptic, Ozil, and kissed in the park. Oh boy. E left at 10:18. I rang her up and heard the latest family news. More rows last night until 2 in the morning. I can feel the letter of the century coming on. Now it seems that E's father strongly objected to Dad failing to approach him formally to request her hand in marriage. E's mother had also found one of Dad's letters under her daughter's pillow. Both parents had read it and reached the erroneous conclusion that more was going on than strict Methodism encouraged. February 16th, sent copy of huge letter to E for approval and sanction. Perfect, I think, and pray. 20th, rang E. Letter had the expected effect. Parents crazed with anger, E in tears, but will come through unscathed as we are in the right. 21st, parents veto phone calls. Circus on camp this week. Sounds of whiplash and applause from the drill shed.
baby elephant on the agenda. It performed an undisciplined action on Tuesday night. High spot. Had a terrible time with a pianist who had an 1862 style and no idea of tempo. He wants to marry at Reverend Phoenix's new church. Tra-la! Home atmosphere terrible. April 3rd, Cologne, Munster, Cassel, Frankfurt and numerous other towns captured. Ruhr encircled, and the whole German front collapsing. Night, attended first camp concert rehearsal. I have a play part, am a clarinet soloist, and one of a 4-voice harmony team, my own version of Java Jive by the Ink Spots.
Right, so it's, well, you know the first verse.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love Java Java. Coffee and tea and Java and me, a cup. I love coffee sweet and hot. Most Mr. Nutter, I'm a coffee shop.
Coffee pot.
I'm a coffee pot.
Shoot me the pot.
Pour me.
A shot.
Shoot me the pot. Pour me a shot.
He has 2 wisdom teeth extracted, noting that the dentist's name is Mr. Savage. On April the 12th, there is a heavily underlined entry. President Roosevelt died 10:30 p.m. German cities were falling every day. April 25th. Russians now surround Berlin completely. Hitler supposed to be in Berlin. Night, played at Savoy. 27th. Great day for news. Mussolini captured. Germany cut in 2. Played at Bridgend at night. 29th. Mussolini definitely dead. Germany crumbling.
Right?
Yeah, anytime.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java that loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup. Boy, I love Java, sweet and hot. Whoops, Mr. Motor, I'm a coffee pot.
May the 2nd, use of air raid sirens at an end. German army in North Italy has surrendered. 6th, played at Sergeant's Mess at night. We had a colossal jive. Oh, the riffs! 7th, war expected to end any minute. VE, Victory in Europe Day. Final German surrender to the Allies. The war against Germany is over. Mixed feelings today. I feel strongly towards the remembrance of the dead rather than celebrations. Played in gym afternoon, Sergeant's Mess night. Fireworks. Beery hilarity. For me, formal classwork came to an end. Hobby classes were started. Commando courses were run out in the country by bronzed Vulcan NCOs with an exorbitance of muscle and teeth that flashed. I built scenery for the theatre. WAFs were allowed to wear dresses at dances, and our concert rehearsals were always on the go.
Where am I?
The la la la's.
What words?
Shoot me a whatever.
I thought that was just done.
Yeah, do it again with the waiter percolator.
Oh, I thought I did it before.
Wrote 3 letters to E today and sent order for £10 towards our bottom drawer. Still no mail from E. I sent her a telegram of complaint, very frantic. Why no letters, darling? Boo-hoo, I'm forgotten. There's another man, etc., etc. 14th, letter from E! This time followed by 24 exclamation marks. Thanks, darling. May the 21st, 1945. Gad, but love is the goods. 10 years to the day, I would be born. Personally, Churchill annoys me. Time he was out. He resigned today to the King. Night, lovely. I like cycling alone. I sing lustily and then cough when someone appears round a corner.
Dad sang lustily at 3 concerts at the Astra to audiences of 1,250. His 4-part a cappella Java Jive, being a most unexpected departure from his usual instrumental music, was, it seems, the peak of the show. Now, Dad and I will do our best 3-part for you.
We'll go down to I love coffee.
Right, start again then, okay.
1, 2, 3.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, boy. I love Java, sweet and hot. Whoops, Mr. Motor, I'm a coffee pot. Shoot me the pot and pour me a shot. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, boy. Slip me the slug from that wonderful mug, boy, and I'll cut a rug till I'm snug in a jug, boy. Ooh, a slice of onion and a raw one. Draw one. Waiter, waiter, percolator. I love coffee. I love tea. I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, boy. Come on. Thank you so much. It's now June the 27th, and for the next 8 days, once again, E is physically present on the pages of the diaries, her rounded ink lettering left where once her warm hand rested. They meet in Leeds. Spent the afternoon lazy, completely happy. Got super presents of earrings and pillow slips from Mrs. Bower. Salad for tea, evening flick, supper, and so to bed. Or me to bed, Len to settee. There follows a euphoric week in Scarborough, which plays before my eyes like a period film, distant lost days of a perfect summer. They found 2 rooms on Royal Avenue, and E speaks of walking on air, watching the high tide, of getting sunburnt and wet to the skin, of Filey Brig and Whitby Abbey, of burnt soup and spam for dinner. June the 30th, we're having the time of our lives and we know it. I love you, darling, and thanks for all the fun. The last day of the holiday ends, she says, sublimely. The page is sprinkled with kisses. A field of bell tents near Bridgend, physical training of strenuous horror, beautiful coves by Dunraven Castle, a Conti sketch of his tent interior, Sten gun lectures, night manoeuvres, feeling cheesed, and a letter to E of 77 pages. His next 3 entries are all in capitals. August 8th, the new atomic bomb was dropped on Japan today. August 9th, Russia at war with Japan. August 10th, Jap surrender imminent. I expect the World War to end in the next few days. After 6 years, it seems like the dawn of life. I rang E at night. She said I sounded vague and quiet. I did a self-portrait in my room. August 14th, Mother's birthday. Any time now, we think. 15th of August. First heard the news at 8 o'clock in the village cafe. A great, joyful day. I went down to the hangar and said a prayer in the midst of all the Spitfires and hurricanes. I sent a telegram to E. It's also the 2nd anniversary of our engagement. The band played for dancing in the gym that day, to crowds from all over the camp, perched inside the boxing ring, acoustics appalling. He records that he played from 7:30 to 12:30, the best clarinet quickstep he had ever done, and ate onions and bread in bed. August 31st, I live in longing for my leave. I feel very lonely and homesick, full of poignant memories of the past at St Athan. Painted and drew a little. Today, I am the last left of the original four-wing band. I must say I feel all alone, like the last sailor of a sinking ship. Roll on my leave. I'll see E and forget. Dad continues to play for dances almost nightly. October the 2nd, full of cold today, talked in guttural monosyllables. I wish to hell he would write me a real letter. There's too much chatter. Women. Bah! I'm smoking more cigarettes than I should be. I feel nervy. October 5th, letter from Egg. More idle chatter. Hell. I wrote a clarinet duet. October 5th. Great news at night! E coming down next weekend! He details his performances, his solos, his success. On October the 13th, he meets E at Cardiff Station. I felt strange and moody. I couldn't snap out of my general depression even though she was with me. October 14th, I called on E at 9:30. She looks lovely but concerned over me. Went to beach. I feel so much better for having seen her again. 15th, E returned this morning by the 10:15 train. I didn't see her. 17th, no letter yet from E. 18th, still no letter from E. Big trial of war criminals starts at Nuremberg this week. 19th, still no letter from E. 9th, went to Flicks but came out. I couldn't sit and watch it somehow. I need a mental rest or something. I wish to hell he would write. It's on my nerves. October 20th. E has just sent a telegram. She has broken our engagement. The rest of the diary is missing. I am saddened. I sit living his pain. And then I reflect that had they married, I would never have existed. Dances continued. 14 in January, and then Dad ran out of players. Everyone by now was in civilian clothes. If there were two of them strolling round Barry or Bridgend, they had to master the very difficult art of not walking in step. On February the 14th, he fills in his DMOB forms, goes on his last leave to Leeds, and buys the buffet clarinet that you've heard him play tonight. February 21st. Simply can't remember what happened today. Saturday, March the 2nd. E, married today. 13th. Just another day. 14th, and another. Don not feeling so well, under doctor, nerves. April the 2nd, had a farewell jive in the band room. Demobilisation. Demobilisation. I was billeted in a long hut for the last time, and the next day joined crowds of airmen milling to choose our parting gift of a civilian outfit. I picked a suit from a depressing row of what seemed to be undertaker's supplies. I never wore it, and I gave my trilby to someone on the train back to Leeds. Looking back now, how would you sum up your war experience? What does it feel like at this point?
I wouldn't have missed it. So, because that is something I would not have missed, probably I would have to say, what's the most important part of your whole life? I would probably have to say, being in the Air Force.
But that's because I have always felt that I had an easy war, far too safe, far too comfortable. I suppose the RAF needed instructors, illustrative work, that music did something for maintaining morale. But I often think, why me and not We think wrongly of time, he said to me. Time is not divided into unrelated chunks and eras. Time is all attached in one long string, made only of days. There are no gaps in between, only sunsets and sunrises, only days.
I will sing songs. What are we going to sing about?
I'll sing some music and you sing music.
Well, you sing music first and then I'll sing it. Okay,
And together. Hurrah, 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 hurrah. La 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 la
Something about his mental sand, and a little